Imagine you are locked in a wooden box. It is pitch black. The air is so thick with the smell of unwashed bodies and sickness that you have to fight not to gag. You are floating on the water, but you aren't going anywhere. All around you in the darkness, you hear the sounds of dying men, a cough, a prayer, the rattle of heavy iron chains. For thousands of people in the 18th and 19th centuries, this wasn't a nightmare. It was their reality. They were trapped in the hulks, decommissioned warships stripped of their glory and turned into floating dungeons. These weren't just prisons. They were death sentences disguised as justice. By the end of this video, you'll understand why even the guards called these ships floating hells. To understand this horror, we have to look at the year 1776. The American Revolution was kicking off, and the British Empire had a massive problem. For years, they had been shipping their convicts across the Atlantic to the American colonies. But when the colonies declared independence, they refused to take any more British prisoners. Suddenly, Britain's prisons were overflowing. They were bursting at the seams. The government needed a quick fix, a temporary solution. They looked at the riverbanks and saw the rotting carcasses of old warships, vessels that were too damaged to sail, but too expensive to scrap. They called them hulks. They stripped the masts, anchored them in the mud, and packed them with humans. It was supposed to be temporary. But like so many government failures, it lasted for 80 years. Take the Justitia, one of the first hulks. In just 2 years, 26% of its prisoners died. That is, 1 in 4 men dead from disease and neglect before they even finished their sentence. Let's take a tour of these floating coffins. If you were a prisoner, you were stripped, washed in freezing river water, and shackled with heavy irons that would stay on your legs for years. The skin around your ankles would eventually turn raw and infected. You would be marched down into the bowels of the ship. The stench hit you first. A toxic mix of bilge water, rotting timber, human waste, and disease. Typhus and cholera didn't just visit the hulks, they lived there. At night, you were packed into hammocks so close together that if the man next to you coughed, you felt it on your face. But the horror didn't end at sunrise. These ships were labor camps. Prisoners were forced to dredge the Thames River, standing waist-deep in freezing mud hour after hour, clearing the riverbed for the very navy that had imprisoned them. Or they were hauling stone to build the Woolwich Arsenal walls. And if you disobeyed, you were sent to the Black Hole, a tiny, airless, solitary confinement cell in the deepest, darkest part of the ship. Men went in sane and came out broken. Before we descend further into the darkness, if you believe forgotten stories like this deserve to be told, please subscribe to the channel, share this video, and leave a comment below. It helps us uncover more dark history. Now, back to the river. Escape was nearly impossible. If you jumped, the heavy irons would drag you to the bottom of the Thames. If you managed to swim, the mudflats would swallow you.
or the guards would simply shoot you from the deck. But if you think this fate was reserved for hardened killers, you're wrong. This is the part of the story that is hardest to stomach. The British justice system of the 1800s didn't care about age. Enter the Euryalus. The Euryalus was a hulk reserved entirely for children. Boys as young as 8 or 9 years old were sent here. Their crimes? Stealing a loaf of bread, pickpocketing a handkerchief. Imagine an 8-year-old boy separated from his parents, surrounded by 400 other terrified children, locked in a floating cage. Bullying was rampant. The stronger boys would steal rations from the weak. There are records of boys gnawing on old bones just to survive. The government took these children to reform them, but instead, the hulks hardened them. They went in as mischievous boys and came out, if they came out at all, as traumatized men. For decades, the polite society of London ignored the rotting ships in the river. It was out of sight, out of mind. But slowly, the truth began to leak out. The horrors of the hulks were immortalized by Charles Dickens in Great Expectations. The character Magwitch, the terrifying convict who escapes the marshes, was a product of these ships. Dickens gave the public a look at the monsters the government was creating. As reports of the mortality rates and the abuse of children spread, the scandal became too big to ignore. Finally, in 1857, the system was abolished. The ships were towed away and broken up for firewood. But they left something behind. Thousands of prisoners died on those ships, and because the government didn't want to pay for proper burials, they were buried in shallow, unmarked graves along the mudflats of the river. Today, people walk their dogs and have picnics on the shores where these ships once rotted. Most of them have no idea that beneath their feet lie the bones of thousands of forgotten souls, men and children who were ground to dust by the machinery of the British Empire. So I have to ask, was this a desperate measure for a desperate time? Or was it a state-sanctioned crime against the poor? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you think the hulks were a nightmare, you won't believe what happened when 2 men found a glowing blue stone in Brazil. Click here to watch the story of the Goiânia disaster. I'll see you there.